Hello and welcome to my creative castle. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for choosing to come back, hang out, and spend a little bit of your day with me. And thank you for your patience while I briefly introduce myself to anybody who might be new to my channel. Hi, my name's May. I love yarn. I love to knit and crochet. Those are my hobbies, and I also happen to have been born visually impaired, legally blind, and completely colorblind. So I mostly knit and crochet by feel. And as I've mentioned in several of my videos, October is Blindness Awareness Month. So yes, I am going to be talking about topics on this channel this month that have to do with visual impairments and blindness. But don't worry, we're going to talk about yarn, we're going to talk about patterns, we're going to talk about the things that all my yarn lovers love to talk about. And why I think this is such an important topic is because, as I've said, there are 16 million people in the world who are considered legally blind. And we know that there's people get diagnosed all the time with macular degeneration, with cataracts, with diabetic retinopathy, conditions that cause their eyesight to deteriorate, to change. And then people say, I'm going to have to give up knitting. I'm going to have to give up crocheting. I can't see my stitches anymore. And for many people, adjusting to blindness can be very difficult, right? It can be stressful sometimes. Sometimes it can be anxiety provoking. Some people, not all, but some people get depressed. And so in my opinion, as somebody who also happens to have a doctorate degree in psychology, yes, I did go to 10 years of college, the last thing that we should do when we're depressed and we're struggling is give up the things that bring us joy, right? The things that bring us happiness, the things that give us purpose, right? We shouldn't do that. So it's okay to set it down for a while, right? While you're learning things like Braille and how to navigate your home and how to cook and how to do basics in life. It's okay to set down hobbies for a while, but in my opinion, it's so soothing to just do something that we know. And so I don't think we should give it up for a minute, in my opinion. But I know that can be difficult for some people, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about today is what do we do when we can no longer see our printed pattern? So all of this pile of luscious goodness, I have no idea if we're going to talk about all this stuff today, because if you're a returning viewer, I have like an idea of where I want to go usually with most videos, but I don't use a script, I don't use notes, so we just go where we go, right? We follow the creative process, right? It's like when I'm designing, we just go with it, we try it. So all of this clothing, the coats, the cardies, the socks, the dresses, right? The dresses, all of this stuff is stuff I designed myself. Now, I didn't design the plushies here, the bears, the bunnies, the bees, the turtles, but we just might get around to talking about them today. I don't know yet, but we just might. So they're here just in case. But like this dress, right? Got some leaves on the top. We got some diamonds on the bottom. Some hoodies, blankets, tops. Y'all helped me design this, dotty tank top, right? Crochet and knit. I designed all of this myself, okay? And so that is what I want to talk about is the first thing. When you can't see a pattern, if you already know how to knit and crochet, then just keep doing what you know, okay? Just keep doing what you know. My second video on YouTube, which was my most popular video for a long time, it was my #1 video. My second video was how deteriorating eyesight freed me to design knitwear, because it absolutely did. It freed me from the pattern. It freed, when I couldn't read other people's patterns, it was like, now, I'll be honest with you. When I lived in this house, there were a few years where I didn't knit. I didn't know how to crochet yet, and I didn't knit because I couldn't read my patterns anymore. And I was just like, well, I wasn't knitting. I didn't do it. And now I look back at that, I think, what wasted time, right? What wasted time? I sat and I watched reruns of TV and reruns of Law and Order SVU, and those kinds of shows. The Big Bang Theory, watched reruns. Now, there's nothing wrong with watching reruns of The Big Bang Theory and Law and Order SVU and true crime channels. I watch some of that, 48 Hours, right? Dateline. I listen to that. But you know what? I wasn't stitching. Now, anytime that I'm awake, I'm listening to podcasts, got TV shows on, got music on, listening to audiobooks. I'm stitching. My hands are going. But I look at that time now as such a wasted time that I could have and should have been creating. But I was so frustrated because I just couldn't see my work anymore. I couldn't see patterns anymore. And then it just dawned on me one day when I was starting to work on something, and then I couldn't see, which if you're new to my channel or you've missed it somehow, I was born legally blind. I was born with a condition called optic nerve hypoplasia, which means my optic nerve stopped developing before I was born. I have a very primitive visual system. Just a few of my night vision cells are connected to my brain, okay? The day vision cells in my head, my cones that see color, that see in the daytime, are not connected to my brain at all. None of them. They're there, but they're not wired, okay? Because it's the optic nerve that is the wire, basically, that connects your eyeballs to the vision processing center in the back of our head. And so the cells are present in my eyes, but they're not wired to the back of my brain. So, it's like when you don't plug in your stuff, right? It don't work. So they're not plugged in, basically. My cells for seeing in the daytime, for seeing detail, for seeing color, are not plugged into to the visual processing area of my brain. So they don't work. So I just have a very primitive vision system. And since then, my eyesight has changed. It's deteriorated. We don't know why. People just say, yeah, that can happen. Nobody knows why. Have moments where I think, oh my gosh, it's concerning. It can be distressing. But overall, I don't sit here and worry about it. I just do what I do now, right? But there was definitely a time when I thought, I can't knit. What am I going to do? And then it just sort of like dawned on me. It was like, just do what you know. Right? Just knit. You don't have to use anybody else's pattern. Just cast on some stitches and start creating. And that was so liberating. And that was so freeing. And so if you already know how to knit and crochet, just keep knitting and crocheting. Just make simple scarves and, things that you can do with just basic knit. I've already lost something. Just basic stitches, right? And so there are patterns that I happen to know very, very well. I was looking for that scarf and I've already lost it because, that's typical of me, right? Y'all know that. You all, if you're a returning viewer, you know that about me, right? I put stuff in front of me and then I'm like, it's right in front of me, but I don't know where it's at. Oh, my double crochet scarf. Okay. Right, like this scarf, I've showed it on here a few times out of the Brava stripe in the Color Cafe. This scarf is literally just double crochets with fringe and some solid granny square pockets. That's it. And I did this so I could practice keeping my stitch count straight, right? So I could keep my edges straight and keep my stitch count straight. But if you just know how to do the double crochet and that's all you could do, then just practice doing your double crochet by feel, okay? And just do something like that. But I have certain stitch patterns as a knitter. I have a lot of knowledge. So if you've been knitting for a long time, guess what? I bet you have a lot of knowledge too, right? So I designed all this stuff without patterns. Yay, right? And so, like, I have this giant, we've seen it on here a few times, my queen size vine lace blanket that this lives in the master bedroom, right? So that's why you don't see it in here very often, but it's a vine lace blanket because you know what? It's queen size, made it to fit my bed, did it in 29 days in the middle of the winter, December to January, because what else you gonna do out here when it's, 5 degrees out, right? What you gonna do but knit yourself a queen size blanket? So we might do that again this winter, knit ourselves a queen size blanket, right? So this is literally just the vine lace pattern that I designed on a queen size blanket. So, if you know how to do vine lace, then just make yourself blankets, make yourself scarves. You can know these patterns, right? I take the same vine lace, I put it on. This is a scarf. This is the same pattern. It's a scarf in the Aloft lace weight super kid mohair. Guess what? This little scarf in the lace weight took me a lot longer to make than the queen size blanket, okay? Because it's lace weight. But if you just know these patterns, if you even just know a few patterns, hey, have at it. And you can make scarves, you can make blankets. I made tops with vine lace, right? You've seen I don't even know if I brought it in here now, but the purple top that we made this summer, where I've used vine lace, not that one, for the straps, okay? So if you know those patterns, then just start putting them together in, like, my feather and fan blanket. There's a free tutorial for this on my channel. Now, I don't own feather and fan. That's just like a ripple stitch blanket. I don't own it, but I put it out there as a knitting tutorial because I think it happens to make a beautiful blanket. And I really feel like we see a lot of crochet tutorials out there, but in my opinion, we don't see a lot of knitted tutorials. And so I think it's really important that we put more of those out there on the internet for people who can't access printed patterns. And then you can also take that feather and fan, and guess what? I designed a dress with the feather and fan, okay? I put the feather and fan in the round at the neckline of this black dress. You've seen me wear this before on the channel. And then at the bottom of the dress. So if you just know feather and fan and vine lace and a few stitch patterns that you have in your head and some basic knowledge, then just do that, right? Just do what I put feather and fan at the bottom of this top here in the purple with the leaves on top. I designed this top as well. So that's the first thing I want to say to you is that, if your vision is deteriorating and you already have some skills, right? You already have a few patterns, remember, whether it's knitting or crochet, then just do what you know. Take the skills that you know and start creating your own stuff. You will be surprised. I never imagined that I would be designing my own clothes, right? That I'd be sitting here on YouTube designing my own clothes, right? Like, this is the tank top that had me stymied for so long on how to do the V-neck without having to do pick up and knit, right? You saw this on Tackle It Tuesday, the blue tank top. So I never imagined that this is what I would end up doing because I was struggling to read, okay? But here I am. And so that's the very first thing that I say. Don't give it up. Just do what you know. The second thing I want to say is, if you can't read, then YouTube tutorials are definitely your friend, right? That's the one thing. If your hearing is still intact, and I realize that's not the case for everybody, right? Some people are blind first or deaf first, then they lose their eyesight, and so obviously that can be an issue. There's a genetic condition called Usher syndrome where people lose their eyesight and their hearing at the same time, right? So I know that there are some people who are going to say, I can't hear that, but the majority of people, that's not the case. And so start with your YouTube tutorials, which is why I did the tutorial on the feather and fan blanket, because I want to make sure that we have good described content out there for people who are visually impaired, right? That's why, like, I did my Finish It Friday on my orange and black striped socks with a Finish It Friday, where I walk you through it, I talk you through it, I tell you the steps, because I want people who can't read patterns, because there's plenty of people who are new to knitting and crochet that might watch a tutorial on how to chain, how to get started, how to cast on, but guess what? They don't know how to read patterns yet. There's still plenty of people who don't know how to read patterns, and so that's partially why I do that, is because I want people to just hear it auditorily, right? And figure out, okay, this is how you do it. Now, I honestly just don't think there's enough of that in the knitting world, in my opinion, but there's plenty of that in the crochet world. Okay, there's plenty of YouTube tutorials in the crochet world to choose from where somebody's talking you through it. Now, obviously, there are some that don't have spoken uh, directions that tell you what to do, and that's very, very frustrating. I cannot say that enough. If you're a creator out there, use your voice, even if it's not in English. Like, I'm on the internet, and I get that's the World Wide Web, so I do not expect everything to be in English. Okay, I found tutorials in Spanish, right? And I get that that's not going to work for me, but I also know that there's millions of people in the world who speak Spanish, and there are visually impaired and blind Spanish people, right? Blindness doesn't skip over a group of people. Okay, I've met Mexican people, Chinese people, Korean people who are blind and or visually impaired, people of all backgrounds. It knows no race that it doesn't touch. Okay, so no matter what your language is, please, please, please have auditory description on your channel, because there are definitely some YouTube tutorials out there for crochet where they just print the words on the screen and they got some happy music and that's cute, and I'm like, well, ain't that cute, right? So like I said, it was October and I wanted to crochet a spider. Well, guess what? The very first YouTube tutorial that I came up with for a crochet spider, I know that she spoke English because she talked in the beginning of her video, but then when it came to the actual spider, there was no auditory instructions. It was just printed on the screen. And so that tutorial was useless to me. It was useless to me. So, I'm not going to name who they are because there's a lot of that out there. So I'm just going to say, please use your voice. Please describe what you're doing to help make the internet accessible. So, and obviously some content creators are better at using their words than others. My opinion, as somebody who's new to crochet, I'm not new to crochet now, but my sister taught me the basics of crochet. My sister taught me how to chain and how to single crochet. She taught me the basics. But I've learned the rest of what I know from crochet off of YouTube. And so, in my opinion, the best describers are Glenda over at Creative Grandma, right? This blanket behind me is her Victorian star pattern, her blanket. I probably was crocheting for like 6 months, maybe, when I made this blanket of hers by just listening to her tutorial. And it was so thoroughly described. So I can absolutely follow Glenda's tutorials. I can follow Crystal's tutorials from Bag O Day. Hers are you've seen me do her show off her patterns for Finish It Friday, her Carolina poncho. I've done 2 of her shawls. I can follow her tutorials. Juan, the Yarn Addict, I've shown 2 beanies at least that I've done with him. The Cardi, that big boxy Cardi that you've just seen on here, that's his. So those are, in my opinion, if you're losing your eyesight or you're visually impaired and you're wanting to get into this, I would highly recommend checking out Glenda from Creative Grandma, Crystal from Bag O Day, and Juan the Yarn Addict. And you're going to get people who really know how to use their words, okay? So that's the very first thing that I would say to do, is to just listen, right? Just listen. So that's the first thing to do. Now, obviously, the next thing that we can do with our printed patterns is just the good old-fashioned magnifier, right? I mean, the magnifier. So you can, usually pick up a magnifier at any old store. Most of them are like a 3x, a 5x. This one happens to be a 10x. I've had this one since I was probably in high school, middle school, high school. This is one that they bought for me. I've carried it around in my purse. I've had it with me. It's been to college with me. It's been, I've had the magnifiers, that 10x magnifier, which is pretty good for a little tiny handheld portable magnifier. So the magnifier, but check the times, right? Because a lot of them are just going to be like a 3x. A lot of the ones that you buy that you can just do 3 times magnifier, and that's not usually enough for most people. 5 times is usually what most people need. At least the 10x, definitely a lot better. Um, so there's that. That's the very first thing that I want to suggest to people when you start having problems seeing is just use your magnifiers, right? So there's that, right? Just go old school on them. So let's see. I brought in some printed material as well. And so if you have some basic knowledge even of stitch patterns and patterns in a course, you can just, even if you know your basic stitch patterns, you can just print those out in large print, right? Like if you wanted to learn like the feather and fan, you can find basic feather and fan instructions and type those out and print those out in large print. Like this is my rough draft. This is not the final edit of it, but my crochet shell and trellis beanie, there's a free YouTube tutorial on my channel for my crochet shell and trellis beanie. And so this is just like an example. I think this is probably like an 18-point font or something, so that can really help out some people, is just even finding your basic stitch patterns to learn and then figuring out how you can implement that, or like a basic hat pattern or something, and print that out for yourself in large print, right? Take it, print it out in large print. So don't be afraid to do that, just to try to get yourself the info. And then we can talk about how we can access, even like, I'm trying to make sure everything that I have here is free, right? Because I can't show you anything that's copyrighted, unfortunately, to even illustrate this. I'd love to be able to, but I just know somebody would say, that's copyrighted. So I want to try to make sure that everything that I show you is free access on the internet. So if there are patterns like Little Mishka, right? Mr. and Mrs. Bear over here, right? They're a free pattern off of Knit Picks. And so you can take this free pattern. And so this is literally just like a 2-page pattern, right? You can print out the instructions for Little Mishka, and then you can take your copy of it and you can divide it up into sections. And like you could take your piece of paper that has just the instructions on it, right? And then you can cut it up into sections, right? I happen to be, you can usually see, even if you can't see the words, like I can still tell, okay, this is letters here. I can see the black versus white. I can see that there's still writing there. Just because I can't read it, I can still see that there's printed material there, right? So you can take this and you can chop that up into sections, right? Into little sections. And then you can enlarge that on your printer. And I tend to do that sideways because you can get it much wider. So for a long time when I worked with this pattern, I would chop that up and suddenly my pattern becomes multiple pages. So yes, it does become multiple pages. It's now 6 pages, right? But you can take that up and you can chop it up, and this is probably enlarged over 200%, okay? From this original pattern, we've enlarged it over 200% by taking one printed page and chopping it up into multiple sections, and then taking that and enlarging that. You can do that at home on your home printer. However, we all know home printers can be a real pain in the behind to access once you start not being able to see the screens because they're all touch screens. I know the basics on my touch screen of, you know, where my copy is. The copy place is on the screen and they're resized. There's a lot of stuff that my printer can do that I don't know what to do with because I can't see it. But I know how to enlarge stuff because I've been visually impaired my whole life, okay? And when I was in the 9th grade, I was in a health class. And I happen to have a teacher for health class that year named Mr. St. Ange. Well, Mr. St. Ange was a paraplegic. Mr. St. Ange was in a wheelchair, okay? He was paraplegic. And but he was, by the way, the coach of the swimming team. The man had a really strong upper body, and he was a swimmer, and he knew that was really important for him to keep his upper body strong. He was a swimmer. So as a man, in a wheelchair with a disability as a paraplegic who navigated the world as a disabled person, the one thing that he knew from me as a visually impaired student, as a student with a disability, was that I was going to have to start learning how to do things for myself. Right? He knew that better than any other teacher that I had. He knew I had to start learning to do things how I needed them. And so when he would give me stuff in class, he would say, you go down to the office, I'm going to tell the receptionist that she needs to teach you how to use that copy machine, right, where the button, that, and in those days, the copier still had tactile buttons on, thank God, right, it wasn't touchscreen, it still had tactile buttons that I could feel and memorize the keypad. Touchscreens are definitely a whole another thing. They don't have the touchscreens on printers to where they talk yet, unfortunately, right? But he said to me, he said, I'm going to tell the receptionist down at the office that she needs to teach you how to use that copy machine, and you are going to be responsible for enlarging all of your own class materials as big as you need them. He said, I'm going to tell her she's going to teach you how to use that copier, how to enlarge things, and how to make them, he said, I'm going to tell her to give you as much paper as you want, as big a paper as you want. So I didn't even use 8.5 by 11 paper anymore in high school. They gave me like the big, 11 by 17. Even, I had access to the big paper, right? And he said, I'm going to send you down there, and you're responsible for enlarging all of your own class material. I'm just going to give you stuff in class like everybody else, and then you go to the office and you make that as big as you need it, okay? And so I was taught to take my handouts from class and chop them up into pieces, just like this printed pattern, and take the sections of it and make it, but I was using the 11 by 17 paper, and making that stuff as big as I needed. So definitely do that for yourself. If you can't do it at home and you really have like certain patterns that you want to memorize, like blankets or things that you want to do over and over again, take it to like an Office Depot or an Office Max, like some of your basic stitch patterns with knitting and crochet. Like maybe you have, like certain things that you have that are like free access to on the internet. If you can't figure out how to get those enlarged to as big as you need them, then you take it to like an Office Max or someplace and see if they'll help you do that, okay? So that's something that he definitely taught me was, you know what? You make that, right? You take that and you enlarge that and you make that bigger. So this is at least 200, it's probably 230% enlargement from that original pattern. So that's definitely something that you can do to help yourself if you still have some sight, right? That's something that you can do to make your stuff bigger. So do that. That's not all of that page. Like, there's no way that pattern was just 6 pages. I know it took like way more pages than that, but you can definitely make it bigger. And then on top of that, guess what? So once I've enlarged this like 200 and some %, it's still hard for me to see anymore. So now I can use my magnifier on that. I can use my other magnifying devices on that, which we're going to get into in just a minute. We're going to talk about devices. We're going to talk about technology too, and how we can use that. I can use my 10x magnifier on this printed pattern that I've already enlarged, right? So there's that. Okay, so don't be afraid to enlarge the print really big by copying it if it's yours, right? If it's yours, or if it's free access, then don't be afraid to do that. That's another thing we'll talk about. We are allowed, as somebody with what's called a print disability, you're allowed to get something in an accessible format. And that does include large print. Yes, it includes audio. Yes, but it includes Braille, but it also includes large print. Now that means something, if it's free access on the internet, like a free pattern from Knitpicks, a free pattern from Lion Brand, from Yarnspiration, from Premiere, if it's a free pattern that everybody else has access to, then you can do that with. If it's my knitting magazine that I have purchased, then I can do the same thing with these patterns. I can take it, I can photocopy the page out of my magazine and then enlarge it to as big as I need it. But what do most things, when we purchase like a PDF or something, what does it say? For personal use only, right? So that doesn't give us permission to take a pattern that we haven't paid for and say, well, I'm just gonna, copy somebody else's pattern in large print. Like, okay, like my sister knits and crochets, and she's got a bunch of knitting books too. I can't just be like, can you photograph that for me in large print and I can have it? No, we can't do that. Right, so we do get exemptions from copyright, meaning we can have material in accessible formats, but we still have to have purchased the material, right? You understand that? And it's the same thing, like we can't sell photocopies just like anybody else, right? Just a person without a visual impairment, we can't photocopy our magazines and our books and sell that stuff, right? It's the same thing. So, but yes, you are allowed to take, and just like a sighted person who might want to photocopy like a pattern out of their magazine to maybe just take it with, and maybe they're traveling with their project and they don't want to take the whole magazine with them, but they just want that pattern. They're allowed. They don't want to keep, like, they want to keep that pattern with that yarn, right, in their stash. You see me do that. Like all certain yarns that I buy for certain patterns, I photocopy the pattern, stick it in the bag with the yarn, and it stays there for years, right? But that way, at least when I go through my stash later, I'm like, oh yeah, I bought that for that, right? So so that says that, like, for personal use only, we have exemptions to copyright for large print. I can put my stuff in an accessible format, which includes large print. So, but it needs to be something that you purchased or that is free access. I really want to stress that. I'm not telling anybody to violate copyright laws, okay? I want to be super clear with that. But if it's out there on the internet, you can have it put in large print. You can have somebody print it out in Braille for you if you have access to that. I've talked about that in my other video. There are Braille embossers if you can get your hands on one of those for thousands of dollars, or find a facility that has one that'll allow you to use it. You could absolutely print out public use patterns in Braille. They make what's called a refreshable Braille display for your devices. They are thousands of dollars, so guess what? I don't have one. Can I read Braille? Yes. Do I have one? No. The National Library Services, which I've been using since I was like 3 or something, does have a limited number that they give out to customers for a whole variety of reasons. I don't have one. The majority of the ones that they use are mostly compatible with Apple devices, because the majority of blind people use Apple devices. I use Android. I believe that they do have some that work with Android, but you know what? I also really want to know that everybody who's totally blind who needs one of those gets one, because I can still read sometimes large print and zoom and magnify. For short periods of time, I can still use my eyesight if I use, depending on the day and the light and all those factors, I can still do that. So it's like way more important to me to know that they have enough of those to give out to all of the totally blind people or deaf blind people. Those Braille displays are really crucial for people who are deaf blind, right? They need those. Because they can't listen to stuff anymore. But if you are deafblind, refreshable Braille displays are a great option. And the print Braille stuff. So, okay, the other thing I want to make sure that I talk about is books. Okay, books. Let's talk about that before I forget. Because I have a ton. Like this magazine. I subscribed to Vogue Knitting for years, right? For years. I have a shelf full of Vogue Knitting magazines, and I get so frustrated. I'm looking at them like, I got all these print patterns that sometimes I feel like, oh my gosh, they're useless to me, right? So, but I can still see the pictures, so I definitely still thumb through them to get inspo. I look at the pictures, I try to get ideas, I try to recreate off of pictures, try to just kind of do my thing, right? So, but let's talk about books. So this is a book that I bought called Crochet Cute Critters. Now I can't show you this because it's copyrighted, but I bought this and I was definitely using my camera. So prior to the most recent additions of phones, most of them just have like regular, cameras on them. And I really loved my cell phone that I had for a long time. And then I got, I didn't even want to get like a full-on touchscreen. I actually held on to my tactile keyboard on my phone for a long time. Did not want to. I didn't even want to go to a smartphone. I had a flip phone until 2013, y'all. I did not. I was like, I don't want it. And I didn't want to go to the S8. I had an S8, an Android S8, and then I went to the S8, and I was like, okay, it had a camera on it, and I did not want to upgrade to the 21. Phone didn't work right, so in 2021, I got the the 21, which is this guy right here. The S21. Now the phone that you're watching me on is my 23. I really am not the kind of person that wants to upgrade my phone every 2 years. I hate that. Hope we don't have to do that. But the one thing that I definitely discovered is that these cameras on them now, right? They have really good zoom and magnifying on them. So look at that. So that's also something you can do, is you can just use your camera on your phone. I do this all the time now, so I don't have to worry. For the longest time, I couldn't access my print, and now I use the camera on my phone. This is at the 10, which is really just about useless to me anymore. But you can enlarge it to 30. You do really have to play with it, and like I have to oftentimes like put my patterns way up somewhere else, and then like stand across the room from them. But I do it all the time. You wouldn't believe like the gymnastics that I do to access my patterns. I have no idea if you can see that on the screen or not at the 30 zoom, or if it's clear or not. But that is something that I do all the time with my patterns, okay, is that I play with this zoom on my phone and try to find the print on there, try to get it at just the right place where the print is readable. I think the print is readable there. Not totally sure. But that's absolutely something you can do. But unfortunately, the range for the 30 is, kind of like past my arm length of where you have to like get it. But I have done a lot of that. I cannot even tell you how much of that I do playing with the 10 under certain lighting conditions. The 10 magnification can still work for me. Sometimes I have to go to the 30 and then I'm doing, that. But do use your phones now. I think both your Apple and your Androids now have really good zoom technology on your phone that you can use, right? So play with that. Now I have something here that I'm going to show you. I looked it up and I was really sad to discover that I think that they've finally stopped making this product, sadly. But it's called a Maxport viewing system, and it has glasses. You put the glasses on. I don't know, weird, right? It's got a power thing button here. You push the power button, and then it has this little portable camera, and you just scan this over the print that you're looking at, and it is projected onto the glasses up to about, I think, 28 to 30 times magnification. This mostly lives on my kitchen counter. I use it in the kitchen a lot to access cookbooks, to access packaging, to see things that I'm cooking. And it's got 3 different settings. You can just use it standard, where it just shows you exactly, and then it's only does black and white. It doesn't do color. And then you can switch the print to real bright black on white. And of course what I do is I take it to the inverted, to the black background, the white print. So this lives in my kitchen a lot, but it's also here sometimes that I use it on my patterns and stuff too. I'm going to be starting, I think, but I can only look at this kind of stuff for a very short time. I get really, really bad eye strain and headaches from trying to use my eyes with stuff that's magnified that much, okay? And that's something to keep in mind. I have no idea if that's going to be something that other people have issues with or not, but for me it is. So I can't read for very long with this type of device, but definitely that's something that I do. These systems are made by some company called Enhanced Vision System. I just looked them up today. I cannot find the Maxport for sale on their site anymore, and I am so sad about that, y'all. I love this thing. My ex-boyfriend, who I was dating in college and in graduate school, when I started graduate school, he bought these for me. He's probably 25 years old, because I think he bought these for me maybe 2000, 2001. Okay, and it costs over $1,000. The assistive technology, unfortunately, is not cheap. That's the one thing I'm going to tell you. Going blind is not for the poor, unfortunately. That's the sad reality. Is all the technology is really the braille embossers are going to cost you thousands of dollars. The refreshable braille display is going to cost you thousands of dollars. This vision system was going to cost you like $1,000, $1,200. So I just looked on their site. I don't see this anymore, but I did see one on eBay for $50, right? Because a lot of people, when they're in the process of going blind, they buy them, and then once they lose all their eyesight, they're not good to them anymore. So they'll sell them. A lot of people who have age-related conditions get them. They die. Yeah, their kids are like, what we got to do with it? So they sell it. So you can absolutely still find these on eBay. The port means they were portable. Mine, the batteries no longer work because it's old. So I have to have mine plugged in, but they do have batteries that sometimes will still work. So I got these. My boyfriend bought these for me in graduate school, and it was just critical for me to have these because I wrote my master's thesis and my doctoral dissertation because I had this device. Okay, I took this when the batteries were still working great then. I took these to the libraries all over the colleges because back then we didn't do research we did basic research on the internet, but we still had to pull the hard copy journals out of the stacks, look at them, access them, read them, photocopy them, bring them home, okay? And so there was no way I could go to the computer and I could do my search, and it would search the journals, and it would read me the abstracts, but they weren't available online like they are today. And so I can't even tell you how many college libraries writing my master's thesis and dissertation, pulling journal articles. I walked around the libraries with my guide dog harness in one hand, walking around with these glasses on. I don't even have to take them off, right? Even though they're black, and you can't see the screen, the material's printed on the screen. There are screens on this. This is what these look like. There are screens, and the material that you're looking at with your camera is going, like if I take this camera and I scroll it across the print here, that print is going to be projected like 20 to 28, 30 times a large print on this screen on my glasses, okay? So I would just put these on and walk around like some futuristic creature in the library with my guide dog and pull journals. And that's how I did my doctoral research and my master's paper. That's how I wrote. That's how I went to graduate school. So you can still find these on eBay. I was really impressed to see one for $50. I was like, wow, that's a deal. Don't know how well it works. Can't tell you that. Probably doesn't come with any guarantee. The batteries probably don't work on them anymore, just like mine. Right, so mine is plug dependent. Now it's no longer the port, the max port. The port part is gone, the portability part. But I absolutely still use mine all the time for cooking in the kitchen, for reading directions, and sometimes for knitting and crochet. But Enhanced Vision System still does have some new devices, the Merlin, the Da Vinci, that are tabletop designs that have like a big monitor. You can use the camera, and then it's projected onto this big monitor. Some of those also have text-to-speech, okay? So there's still a lot of devices out there. Those are called CCTVs or closed-circuit televisions. And they're just, they have all kinds of technology over there at Enhanced Vision Systems. So there's that. So we have books, right? So this is called Crochet Cute Critters. And I tried my darndest, right? As somebody who's learning to crochet, to do these amigurumis, and I would enlarge up to like 30 times on my phone. I was using that 30-time magnification on my phone, on my Maxport. Couldn't get there. I started making these bees, right? But I told you all these bees are my sister and I, right? This bee pattern came out of the Crochet Cute Critters book. So this is my sister and I as bees. I am bee creative because I'm the creative one. She's bee crafty because she sews and she quilts. So I got these bees out of there. But I made the bees. But then when it got to the wings, my eyes just gave out. Okay, my eyes were like, no, you can't. You're zooming this in 30 times, and you can't do it anymore. My eyes are like, nope, we're done. We're done seeing for today. You've used us enough, and we're done. So, which is kind of just the story of my life, right? So there's a wing pattern in the book. I don't know how much of this we can look at on, like, I think I can show you the pictures of the final objects. I just can't show you the pattern, right, of like how to make it, okay? I can't show you that. But this is what my bees were supposed to look like. I did not do this headpiece. I was just done. I'm like, I'm done. My eyes can't do it. So when I got to the wings, I could not see to make those wings anymore. My eyes were just like, nope, we're done. So I winged it on my wings, y'all. I just winged it. Yeah, I did. So my wings on my bees don't look anything like the wings on their bees. But you know what? I like my wings better. Okay? I do. My issue then, of course, as what I always say, is can I replicate my work? That's always the issue, because I don't take notes. I just sit there and play with my yarn and my needles and my hooks. I don't take notes. So the fact that I could get bee wings to match, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, and that my sister and I have matching wings, it impresses me. I'm like, I could not reconstruct these wings, I don't think, if I wanted to. I don't know. I doubt that I could deconstruct and reconstruct these wings. But I actually like these wings better. Okay, I like my wings better. So don't be afraid to do that as well, right? But that can happen when you have certain visual conditions where you can read a certain amount, but then your eyes are just done. Now, eventually, I could have waited for a few days, right, until my eyes were like, okay, we're gonna read some more. But I just, I don't know how long that's gonna be, and I wanted my bees done, so I just was like, forget it, I'm just gonna do my own thing. And the same thing happened with the turtle, okay? This is my turtle. And I tried very hard, see if I can find the picture of the turtle so you can see it. What is that? That is not the turtle. Okay, this is what my turtle is supposed to look like, okay? That's what my turtle's supposed to look like. My turtle does not look like their turtle. And it's the same thing. I started out zooming the print in up to 30 times. Could not see it anymore. Started the turtle. Couldn't do it anymore. Done. My eyes are again like, no, we're done. We're done reading. No, we can't magnify. You can't get this big enough for us anymore. So again, I could have waited on it. I could have been like, yeah, maybe tomorrow I'll be able to read, But I didn't. So I, again, just did my own thing. Now my turtle's more of a mishap than the bees, right? I mean, my turtle, we don't know what this is a Megasaurus, okay? We don't know what it is. It's not really a turtle, because, I call it a Megasaurus because it's just big. It's just like this, because I made it in the bulky. This is made out of the Hobby Honey Bunny. And because it's made by May, right? I mean, when May makes a big creature, and we don't know what it's called, we just call it a Megasaurus, right? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's not a turtle because I just made it up. So I'll probably try to remake the turtle and actually follow the pattern, because what I did discover is that book is indeed, it's available on Kindle, okay? And so I purchased it. I purchased it as a Kindle book, and there's actually a lot of crochet books available on Kindle. Some are included with Kindle Unlimited if you have it. Some are not. Some you got, like I had to pay for this one. It's not included on Kindle Unlimited, and I can't show it to you because, again, it's copyrighted. But the one nice thing is that and your Kindle Fire has similar settings to what your phone, right? You hear my phone talk to you all the time. Well, my Kindle Fire, your Kindle Amazon is committed to making accessible devices as well. So your Kindle Fire will read to you as well. So you can go through your
amigurumi crochet patterns for beginners. 33 cute and easy crochet amigurumi animals patterns for beginners with step-by-step instructions and illustrations. Gordon, knit, kawaii crochet,
and check out different crochet books that are available.
4.8 out of 5.
And so Kindle, Amazon, I know some people love to hate on Amazon, they love to hate on Jeff Bezos, but Amazon is committed to making accessible devices. And so I can do the same thing on their devices that I can on my phone. I can change the contrast, so when I try to read, it is white on black, which really helps me. The more light I can get out of the background, the better, right? Because of my eyes being sensitive to light, right? I'm photophobic, which means I can't see with more light. I see better at night. So I put all my devices on what's called night mode, or that inverted contrast, inverted colors, the white on the black, to get rid of as much of that bright light out of the background as possible. So if you can buy a book on a Kindle device, now of course you can use the Kindle app. I also have the Kindle app on my phones, but the phone screen is only so big, right? It's only so big. And so if you want to actually visually read that, then you're better off using a tablet like that, where the screen is bigger and you can zoom and enlarge. You can get the print pretty big on it, because I can't show it to you because it's copyrighted. But you can get the print pretty big. You can play with the colors on there. On the Kindle app, it's the same thing. And that voice will read it out loud to you, okay? And now I know it's not the greatest voice, but it will read it out loud to you. And our little friend over here in the corner, we're not going to say her name, Alexa, right? But she can also read out loud to you the majority of Kindle books, okay? I don't know if you know that, but it doesn't have to be an audible book. If it's a Kindle book that you have in your library, you can ask her to read that to you, and she can read it to you. Yeah, so I have had her read to me that cute crochet book. So I have this book now on my Kindle, so the print is really big. I can zoom it in even bigger. I have the print on the max size that she goes to, the Kindle Fire. That voice can read it out loud to me, and my friend in the corner there can read it out loud to me. Now, the one thing to know when you're listening to it is abbreviations, right? You've got to know your abbreviations, okay? So in this book, for example, it uses the abbreviation for magic ring as MR. So she over in the corner and your screen readers don't know that MR stands for magic ring. So they read it as Mr. Okay? So if you're listening to it, you have to know when you're listening to a crochet pattern that MR, Mr., means magic ring, right? 6SC into Mr. Okay, that's 6 single crochets into your magic ring. So that's definitely one thing. You have to know how to think and listen and translate those abbreviations into what it's going to say in a pattern. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for a beginner. Okay, if you're very beginner at it, you really need to know what those abbreviations are going to be and how they're going to sound like translated to electronic speak. Okay, so for example, a lot of crochet and knit patterns use the abbreviation REP for repeat, right? Repeat, and they'll just say REP, repeat. Well, a lot of your screen readers and your technology, like her in the corner, are trying to interpret, like they're like, what would REP be? And so they don't see that as repeat. They think that the AI is still very much in its infancy, and it's cool that it can be read out loud to me, but it can't yet understand in the context of a knitting pattern or a crochet pattern that would be repeat. So it usually says that as representative. It'll say representative, 6 ink representative, and you're like 6 ink representative. What would that mean? 6 increases repeated, right? That's what that means. But if you don't know how to interpret it, right, the AI can't yet say, I'm reading a crochet pattern. Representatives, probably not in the middle of the pattern, is probably repeat, right? But it doesn't know that. It doesn't. It can't think it through yet. The artificial intelligence is not that intelligent yet. Now it's probably going to get there to where it can figure, oh, this is a pattern, and this person needs me to say it this way, okay? But it can't do that yet. So there's that. But you can absolutely buy your crochet, a lot of your crochet books on a Kindle format, and then zoom that in up on your screen and or listen to it. So I may very well try to remake this turtle. I'm happy with my bee wings. I'm not even going to try or worry about the fact that I didn't get the bee wings the way that the book did it. I'm like, so what? I like my bee wings better. That's my sister and I. So, but my turtle's not a turtle. So this guy needs help if he's ever going to be a turtle. So we might try to remake him one day and actually try to use the book. And there's a ton of other really cute patterns in this book. I mean, just these guys on the cover. This, I think there's a giraffe, I think, on the cover. I'm not positive. Love giraffes. They're like my favorite animals in the world are like dogs, horses, giraffes, and dolphins, right? My favorite animals. So you know I want to make a giraffe, right? So at some point we may be making a giant giraffe around here. So there's that. And then of course there's just like electronic patterns, right? So let's see if I can find back the let's see. Let's search for Knit Picks free pumpkin knitting pattern.
Labs icon. Double knitpicks https://blog.knitpicks.com clove and spice knit and crochet pumpkin free pattern.
Okay, so if you tuned in to my YouTube channel last week, what did we do? We knit and we crocheted pumpkins from Knit Picks, right? So we use the clove and spice. Again, this is a free pattern, right? So I'm not giving you anything that you don't have access to, right? This is all, let's see, I already get text offers from you. So, no thank you. We already get that. Let's see. Link to the clove, okay. So, that's weird. Okay, so let's try something else. Okay, let's go to the Knit Picks website. Okay. Let's do my search bar. Okay, search. There we go. I don't know what happened, but that link didn't work anymore. So, free pumpkin pattern.
Space button window Chrome. Spice and amp. 0%.
Okay, let's try that link. Okay.
Web spice sign up. Spice and clove pumpkin.
So if you're visually impaired, a lot of the yarn companies have. Let's see. Download free pattern. Okay. So a lot of your actually let's look at this. Okay. So a lot of your companies like Knit Picks, like We Crochet, like Premier, like Lion Brand have access to free patterns on their website, right? So this spice and clove pumpkins, the ones that we were, I brought in all these clothes and blankies and scarves that I'm thinking we might talk about that, and we talked about it a little bit, right? But I didn't bring the pumpkins with me, but they're in the dining room hanging out. But y'all saw the pumpkins that we worked on. Y'all saw that. Let's see, here we go. Okay, so download free pattern. So you can just go there.
0% progress bar. Download again.
Download again. Yes, please.
Tab button.
Download again.
Double tap and hold to long press.
Gotta wait for it to download because I have slow internet here. Y'all heard me talk about that for a long time, right? So I don't know what's going on. Okay.
Collapsed 55,000,005.
Okay.
Open with.
Open to.
All PDF
Not
reader.
that. I like
Drive PDF.
like our Google Best.
Menu collapsed. Drive.
So
Page
you
1
can
of 5.
download it, and what I do
Page
then
2 of 5.
is you can zoom it and magnify it on your screen.
Spice pumpkin pattern. Page 2 of 5. Zoom 1659%.
Okay, so I've got it zoomed in almost 1,700 times, right? Like 1659%. That's almost 1,600 times the original. So if you've got some vision still, you can enlarge this as big as you need it. And again, my biggest issue now is that my phone screen is only so big, right? That's zoomed in at well over.
Spice pumpkin pattern. Page 2 of 5. Zoom 2,267%.
So that's zoomed in over 2,000 times to the original size, right? So that is something that you can do. That again, you're only going to be limited by the size of your screen then on your device. So again, I tend to only use my phones, but the more that I need to enlarge things, right, the more that I'm like, I am thinking, you know what, I can look up these free patterns on my Kindle too with the larger device. So if you have a large monitor or a large screen, that can definitely help you. You can get that stuff super, super big on your screen. So definitely think about that. But also, your screen reader will just read this to you, right? So let's just.
Spice pumpkin pattern. Directions. Using a long tail cast on 6 stitches. Divide stitches evenly across 3 needles and begin to work in the round. Be careful not to twist the stitches of this first round. Increases. 1. KFB around 12 STS. 2. And all even numbered rounds knit. 3. KFB K1. Repeat around 18 STS. 5. KFB K2. Repeat around 24 STS.
Okay.
7.
So
KFB
you can
K3,
listen to
repeat.
that.
Page 2.
The one thing that you're going to have to know, like I said before,
Page 4 of 5.
is you're going to have to know that K2, it'll say things like for your decreases, it'll say K2 tog, right? You have to know that that stands for knit two together, right? So you really have to understand how to translate how the voices are reading those abbreviations to you. So you have to have some kind of basic knowledge. To use the screen readers, you have to have some basic knowledge. So we'll look at the crochet one.
Clove pumpkin pattern. Sphere directions. Begin with a magic loop. CH1 counts as 1 SC, 5 SC into ring. SL. Saint into first CH1 to form a ring. Increases. 1 ink in each SC, 12 STS. 2 ink 1 SC. Repeat around.
So
18
that's the
STS.
same thing. You're going to have to know when it says ink, that's the abbreviation. INC, which if you know how to read crochet patterns, you know that stands for increase, right? You're going to have to know that means increase. So that's just something, if it takes a lot of mental work because you have to listen to it and then you have to translate it, right? Like it'll say saint. Well, that's the ST. It's reading the abbreviation for stitches as saint, right? If you're listening to a knit or crochet pattern with a screen reader, it might randomly say saint or street, right? And you're like, saint or street in my pattern. Well, it's trying to figure out the abbreviation ST for stitches, right? In a lot of knitting patterns, it'll say ST, ST, like stockinette stitches, and it'll read that as like Saint Street. I've listened to knitting patterns before, and I'm like, Saint Street, and it's reading the ST for the stockinette, the stitches, the ST, and I'm like, stockinette stitch. So you have to understand knitting and crochet abbreviations and then be able to translate them. But it's doable without a doubt. It just takes a lot of mental work and processing, and it takes a lot of getting used to. So yes, you can listen to them, but it takes a lot of mental work and a lot of mental translation. And in my opinion, you have to have a real basic knowledge, at least, of your abbreviations of what's going to be used in that particular pattern. I'm gonna get my earbud in better here because I'm using the camera phone.
Screen off. Ringer vibrate.
Did it disconnect from my other thing? I don't know. I'm not sure what I did there. So anyway, that is the topic for today for Blindness Awareness Month, is accessing patterns when you are visually impaired or when you are starting to experience visual changes. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful for somebody. Again, I know these videos are not going to be super popular on my channel. Part of me says don't do them because I need YouTube to know that people want to view my content. But I also feel like it's really, really important to put the information out there for those that do need it, because I know that there are people out there who are dealing with vision changes and they are giving up on their knitting and crochet. Like me, I set my knitting down for a while in this house because I couldn't read my patterns anymore. Okay, because I'm surrounded, to my left, your right, are two bookshelves, by the way, bookshelves full. I have thousands and thousands and thousands of knitting patterns right next to me that I can't use. And even with the zoom and the magnification, my eyes can't read a whole pattern anymore. Okay, if they could, I would definitely be doing that. But visually, I get too much eye when I zoom it into like that 30%. Like I said, just trying to read these amigurumi patterns at 30%. To get the bee, I couldn't even read a full Ami pattern to do a bee with my eyes visually, with the zoomed and magnification. My eyes just can't read visually anymore for very long. They just can't do it. So I have shelves and shelves of printed patterns that my eyes cannot even visually sit and read through an entire knitting pattern zoomed in anymore. They just can't do it. So I have to really chunk it out. I have to be like, okay, look at this part, and then figure out the rest. Go with your knowledge in your head and figure out the rest. Look at the picture, figure out the rest. So there's a lot of technology out there for us. Yes, I have very frustrating moments because I have all these patterns next to me that I can't use. And some days I'm just going to be real with you. It's super frustrating. I'll look at it and I'll think, no matter what I do to zoom this in, I can't read all of this. I can pick out certain letters, I can pick out certain things, but my eyes are never, probably ever, going to be able to sit down and read a whole pattern again. I just can't do it. So, anyways, that's the video. Comment if you want. I'll try to help you out. If you have questions, feel free to ask them if they're related to the topic, right? I'll try to answer them. I may not be able to help you because I don't know everything about knitting and crochet or technology. I don't use Apple products. This is not a debate on which is better. I just don't. So if those are the products that you use, I probably can't help you very much with that either. Just why I'm saying that is that I'm just saying that I can't probably help you with those devices in terms of your settings and how to access things on them, because I don't know how to use those devices. But I know how to use the Kindle Fire and I know how to use my Samsung. So anyways, that's the topic. Say hello if you want in the comment. Let me know your thoughts on the video. Let me know if you're having visual impairment issues. Let me know if this was helpful to you. Ask your questions. Alrighty, my friends. Well, this has been way longer than I intended, of course, right? So, alrighty. Thanks so much for listening. And until next time, happy stitching. Bye-bye for now. Gotta unbury myself from my mountain of creations here. All the stuff that I designed.